Hey everyone, this is Vipul Gupta. I hope you guys are doing great and enjoying this Power BI tutorial series. So guys, today I'm back with another interesting video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about one of the most essential topics in Power BI. I will be disclosing the name in a while. So without any further delay, let's start this video.
Alright. So guys, on the screen you can see there is a very beautifully designed dashboard. So this dashboard has been designed in Power BI. But do you know what does it take to design such a beautiful dashboard in Power BI? Any guesses? So the answer is neither ChatGPT nor any special designing techniques. The answer is pretty simple and it is the most basic component in the field of data analytics. So the right answer is data, or more precisely, cleaner data. So guys, have you ever wondered the data that we use in Power BI to create these graphs or dashboards, is it the same that we feed into Power BI? So the answer is no. So most of the times, the data that we feed into Power BI is in a very bad shape, and we need to make transformations and modifications on that data to make it usable to create graphs and dashboards. Confused? So guys, let me share some real life scenarios that every data analyst or any BI developer faces while working on data. So guys, suppose I'm working as a data analyst for a company and I'm part of the marketing analytics team. Now, the director of marketing wants me to create a dashboard which can give me some insights on how our customer base looks like, right? But what is the source of this data? So basically, we have a company's website where thousands and lakhs of visitors are visiting the website on daily basis, right? Now, on the website, there is a page which asks a particular user to enter their details, their personal details, and that is the source which we are using to create a Power BI dashboard on top of that, right? Now, let me explain some scenarios or challenges that a data analyst has to face. So now on the screen, you can see both of these users have provided us with four data points: name, city, country, and occupation. Now let's discuss all these data points one by one, right? So for user A, he has mentioned his name as Vishal Singh, but you can see by mistake he has entered capital H in his name, right? Similarly, while writing his surname, he has provided a small s, right? Now talking about the user B, she has provided small p and small d. Also, there are multiple spaces in between. Also, before his first name, there is one space here, right? So this is a discrepancy while handling the name of our users, right? Now talking about the second data point, we have city. Now Vishal and Prachi both belong to the city Varanasi, but Vishal has chosen to use Banaras, whereas Prachi has mentioned Varanasi. Right. Similarly, talking about the third data point, that is country. So here Vishal has mentioned as IND to signify India. On the other hand, Prachi has used INDA as the complete name to represent her country. Right. Now, the fourth variable, that is occupation. So Vishal has provided his information that he is a business owner, whereas Prachi has left it blank. Right. So guys, now on the screen, it is clearly visible that this data can't be used directly as it is while creating a dashboard to understand the geography, their occupation, or name of users. Right. Talking about some other example, suppose I'm collecting the data from US. So some of the users have mentioned their country as US, right? Whereas some other users have chosen to use U.S. On the other hand, we have USA, then some other user has written United States of America. Now, if I feed this data as it is in Power BI with all these variables as it is, now this will be a very big challenge because Power BI will not be able to understand that these all four entries represent the single country. So what will it do? It will create four different records or four different categories to represent a single country. So guys, this is a very big challenge, right? So guys, now talking about the previous example where we are collecting data from our website. Now, suppose a user has visited our website multiple times, right? Now, every time he has provided us with some information. So, there is a high chance of duplicacy. So, duplicacy is one of the biggest challenges that we have to face while dealing with the data in Power BI. Others could be we can have null values, right? Some other examples could be, suppose a user has to provide his name and contact information in two different columns, but mistakenly he has provided both the information in a single column. For example, I am a user and I provided Vipul 9412345678. So I have provided my name and contact information in a single column. So we have to work on this particular data so that we can split the name and the contact information. So guys, these are some real life scenarios or challenges that every data analyst or Power BI developer faces while working on data. So how can we overcome these kind of challenges? So guys, Power BI offers you a very special component by the name Power Query. So Power Query has the functionality which can tackle all these kind of challenges, and we can transform our data to be used in Power BI for creating dashboards and graphs. Right. Now let's move ahead and understand what is Power Query and how it can be used in Power BI to tackle these challenges. Right. So first of all, what is Power Query? Right. So Power Query is a tool which we use in Power BI for the purpose of ETL. Now, what is ETL? So, ETL stands for extraction, transformation, and loading. So, by extraction, I mean that Power Query has the feature that we can connect to a particular data source, fetch the data into Power BI, right? By transformation, I mean that we can transform the data to make it ready to use for the creation of charts and dashboards, right? And once we are done with the first and second step, that is extraction and transformation, then we can load the data into Power BI, right? Then it can be used for creation of visualizations, right? So on the screen, you can see there are multiple data sources that we are pushing into Power Query. And in Power Query, after the transformations, we can load the data into Power BI. So guys, here you can see we have Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Dataverse, and Microsoft Azure Data Lake Storage, because Power Query can work along with all these three data sources as well, other than Microsoft Power BI, right? Now, why Power Query is so important? Reason is, most of the times we get the unclean data, right? And whenever a data analyst or BI developer works on this data, so 60 to 70% of his time is spent on data cleaning, right? That is why Power Query is the most essential component of Power BI, right? So guys, now let's take the next step and go to Microsoft Power BI desktop, where we'll be exploring how Power Query works in Power BI, right? Alright, so guys, now we are at the Power BI desktop application, and we already have discussed that Power Query can perform two different functions. The first one is we can use Power Query to extract data from a particular data source, and second is we can use Power Query to transform our data to make it ready to be used, right? So now in order to go to the Power Query editor, what we need to do, we need to click on this option, transform data, right? Now transform data. So guys, this is the Power Query editor interface, right? Now, in order to save our time, I have already exported data from two different sources, right? So every query is representing a data source connection, right? Now, in order to make a new connection, what we can do, we can click on this new source option. We can select the source from where we want to extract the data, and then we can pull the data into Power Query, right? Now, talking about the interface, so on the top, we have the task ribbon or task pane. On the left side, we have the query's name, right? So here we have extracted data from two different sources. So Power Query automatically gave two different names to our two different connections or two different queries. Now, what we can do, we can give a specific name if we want to every query that we have created, right? Suppose we have this query one by the name individual factor scores, right? Now, by right clicking on this, we have these options, right? Now, suppose I want to give it a name, individual factor scores, right? So, using this, I can rename the query or the data source connection, right? Then in the center, we have the central pane. So, if you click on a particular query, it will give you a snapshot of the data which is available in that particular table or connection, right? So guys, on the right side, we have the right pane, right? So this right pane will consist of all the steps that we have applied while transforming or exporting the data into Power Query, right? So guys, now talking about the first query, you can see that we have exported the data from a particular source, right? Now, once we exported the data into Power Query, the first row is not read as a header, right? It's read as a data only. So what we need to do, we need to give a command to Power Query that this particular row should be read as header, right? So this command is available to us in the Power Query editor. So on the task ribbon, you can see we have this option, use first row as headers. So what we can do, we can simply select this and it will select the first row as the headers, right? So now we are sorted with the first challenge, right? So guys, now in the headers, you can see that there are some notations. For state, we have ABC. For quality of life, we have 1 to 3, right? For public health, we have 1.2. So what is it depicting, right? Let's understand that. So basically, it is depicting the data type of each column, right? Now suppose you encountered a scenario where Power Query has read the data type of a particular column incorrectly, right? So guys, now in order to change the data type of a particular column, what you need to do, you just need to click on this part, right? Now it will give you some options out of which you can select what data type you want to select for your specific column, right? So for example, for this column quality of life, it has been represented as a whole number. But suppose I want to make it as a decimal number, right? So what we can do, I can simply click on this column, replace column, right? So now what happens? The data type of quality of life column has been changed to decimal number, right? So guys, this is one of the examples. Now let's go to the next query that we have, right? So guys, this is a table that I've extracted from a website, right? So guys, you can see that since we have extracted this data or table from a particular website, right? So Power Query has pulled some additional records, right? For example, the first record is unnecessarily pulled into Power Query and we need to get rid of this particular record. So what we can do, so in Power Query, we have this feature of remove rows, right? So what we can do, we can select this option. Now here you have some options like remove top rows, remove bottom rows, alternate rows, duplicates and many more, right? Now, since in our case, we want to remove the first record, so what we can do, we can use this remove top rows option, right? Now, it will give you a pop-up and you can select how many top records you want to remove from this particular table, right? So, in our case, I want to remove the first record. So, I will be writing one. All right. So, guys, we have successfully removed that first record which has been unnecessarily pulled into Power Query, right? Now, moving ahead, we can see that the second row consists of the headers, right? But Power Query is not able to read it, right? So we need to tell Power Query that this first record should be read as headers, right? So for this, we can use this option, right? So guys, on the right side, you can see that every step that we are performing, we are getting a record on that, right? Now, moving ahead, in this particular data set, we can see that the actual data is started from the second row and we want to get rid of this first record, right? So what we can do, we can remove this record as well. So by clicking on this particular drop down, you can see these are the options, right? So you can sort your data on the ascending or the descending order. You can remove the empty records, or if you want to perform any filtration, you can do that as well, right? So here in our case, I want to remove the empty records. So what I can do, I can choose this option, right? So remove empty. All right. So guys, now we have successfully removed the empty or null records from our table. Now our data looks much cleaner than it was before after performing these number of steps, right? So now moving ahead, suppose we have this column by the name and status of region, right? So here we have this value United States of America, right? But I want to change this label to USA, right? So what we can do, we can use replace value. So by right clicking on this, we have this option replace value, right? So I want to replace this United States of America value with USA, right? Now I will be doing okay. All right. So guys, I have successfully renamed United States of America as USA. So guys, these kind of operations you can perform in Power Query, right? So guys, now let's explore this dataset more to understand what other operations or transformations we need to apply to make this particular dataset ready to be used in Power BI, right? So now let's scroll right. So we need to basically check for the data types of every column, right? To check for any error or any null values which is coming into this data source, right? Now, here you can see that there are so many unnecessary columns which we have extracted from that particular table, right? And we know that we are not going to use those specific columns in our Power BI, right? So, in order to optimize our memory, what we can do, we can get rid of those columns as well, right? So, for example, we have this other abbreviations and AP column, right? So, what I can do, I can remove these columns. So in Power Query, in the top task pane, you can see we have this option of remove column, right? So I can select this and remove column. So that column has been removed. Similarly, I want to remove this AP column. So I will be selecting remove, right? So guys, now let's explore some other features that Power Query Editor offers to you, right? So we have already discussed about removing and keeping rows, removing columns and choosing columns, right? Now, in addition to that, we have this option of splitting column. So this feature is used to split a particular column into two or more columns, right? So here under this ISO column, we have the country name followed by a hyphen followed by the abbreviation of the state, right? So what we can do, we can use this option to split a particular column into two or more than two columns, right? And guys, these are the options available to us and we can choose any of these options to split our particular column, right? For example, in our case, we want to split this ISO column on the basis of hyphen, right? So we can choose this by delimiter option, right? And we need to provide the delimiter which will split the particular column, right? So guys, then we have this group by feature. So this group by feature can be used to perform any kind of aggregation, right? For example, in this particular data set, we have multiple categories based on the name and status of region, right? So we have federal state, we have state, then we have federal district, right? Now, I want to understand like what is the total count of observations which belong to federal state and federal district, right? So what I can do, I can use this group by option and I can take the count of total records on the basis of this particular column, right? So I will be using group by. Now here I have to pass these arguments, right? So I have to select on what column level I want to group my data. So that is already selected. So guys, in our case, we want to understand like how many records or observations belong to a particular type of state, right? But Power Query offers you these additional options, right? You can choose any one of these and perform the aggregation that you want, right? So in our case, I have chosen count of rows. Now let's execute this. So guys, here you can see that we have successfully grouped our data on the basis of type of state or region, right? Now, I want to sort this data on the basis of count of observations, right? So what I can do, I can click here and I can choose sort descending. Alright. So guys, we can see that the maximum number of observations are state type, right? Followed by the island and atoll. So guys, now we have seen how we can transform our data to make it ready to be used in Power BI, right? So now once we are done with all these transformation steps, what I can do, I can go to this option, close and apply, and it will apply all these changes to the data sources exported and will load this data into Power BI, right? So let's choose this option, close and apply. So guys, the data has been loaded successfully into Power BI, right? So guys, now let's create a data visualization using the data that we have just transformed, right? So let me select the name and the count, right? And in the visualization pane, you can select the type of visualization that you want to create. So I want to see a tree map, right? So guys, here you can see that this is a tree map that we have created by using the transform data, right? So guys, this is all about what Power Query is. We have discussed various examples and how we can use Power Query to transform our data to make it ready to be used in Power BI. So guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this.